Pseudoscience, get at me. Hey everyone, I'm Abbey Sharp. Welcome to Abby's Kitchen. In part one of this two-part series, we will be breaking down the real reasons why you're bloated. But first, let me tell you about my sponsor, BetterHelp. So as you guys know, I've struggled with anxiety my whole life, and getting my mental health under control has actually been a really key step in healing my gut and digestion, since the brain and the gut are so intimately connected. But in 2022, I am really committing to my mental health, and working with a registered therapist is key to supporting my goals. So I recently discovered BetterHelp, which is the world's largest online therapist network with over 20,000 licensed professional therapists. It's not a crisis line or a self-help line. It's professional therapy done securely, anywhere, anytime, online. Now, the way it works is that you just log into your account anytime to send a message to your therapist, and you can get a timely response without needing to wait weeks between appointments. I know how important this is because obviously we can't just plan out when we have our panic attacks or irrational anxious episodes.
So I thought I would dress up for today's panic attack. You know, do something a little special, make a day of it. Anyway,
so that they land the week of our scheduled appointment. Now, it's also a lot more affordable than traditional in-person therapy, and there's also financial aid available for those in need. So if you're struggling with your mental health, definitely check out betterhelp.com/Abby's Kitchen to get 10% off of your first month of therapy. Again, that's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, and you can join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. Okay, let's get back to bloating. And you can pause the screen or look at the description to check out my disclaimer, including a trigger warning to those with current or previous experiences with disordered eating. As always, feel free to skip this video if it's not supportive to your journey. And of course, if you are new here, do not forget to subscribe to this channel and ring that little bell so that you never miss out on an episode. And also follow me over on TikTok and Instagram at Abby's Kitchen. I also want to say very clearly that all digestive issues, including bloating, are remarkably complex. It was really hard for me to make this video because the cause of people's bloating and therefore the appropriate treatment will be highly individualized. So for example, the recommendations for folks with bloating from constipation would possibly make bloating from something like SIBO far worse and vice versa. So always speak to a registered dietitian who specializes in digestive health about your unique case. In fact, I consulted with not one, but 4 of my GI-RD colleagues in this video to get their clinical insight. So a big thank you to Dasha Agoulnik, Amber Gorley, Caitlin Self, and Lacey Dunn for all of their help. As always, I'm going to be leaving links to their practices below. Next, I want to quickly flag that, diet culture has kind of co-opted the term bloating to be like a more PC term for fat. It has also pathologized the very normal experience of your stomach expanding and contracting throughout the day. This is wellness culture BS.
I'm sorry, I'm allergic to bull.
It is normal to experience daily gas, and it's normal for your bowel habits to change in response to certain foods or times of the month. But if you're experiencing bloating that is very painful, linked to other side effects like nausea, where you're visibly distended to the point that you maybe look pregnant or it feels like there's a balloon in there, and that these symptoms seem to be chronic and persistent every day, that's when it's definitely worth reaching out for help. So in part 1, we're going to be discussing the top reasons why you may be experiencing bloating. And then in part 2, we're going to be getting into what to do about it. Reason number 1, food intolerances. Undiagnosed food intolerances to things like dairy, gluten, or literally any other food that's being poorly digested and therefore fermenting in the gut can of course cause excess gas production and therefore bloating. Allergies can also occasionally cause bloating because the histamine response can increase mast cell production, which may elevate estrogen, which can cause constipation, and that can ultimately result in bloating. But generally speaking, bloating is more of an intolerance than an allergy symptom. Unfortunately, while food allergies can be reliably diagnosed, intolerances are a little more hit and miss. Those food sensitivity tests that you see all over Instagram are not evidence-based. So an elimination diet, which should be supervised by a registered dietitian, is really the gold standard of care here. Reason number 2, sensitivity to high FODMAP foods. So FODMAPs are short-chain carbohydrates that are poorly absorbed in the small intestine, leaving them to be fermented by bacteria, which then causes gas. Some of the more common offenders include foods like cruciferous veggies, beans and legumes, dairy, wheat, as well as some non-caloric sweeteners. However, it's important to note that sensitivity to high FODMAP foods is highly individualized, meaning that you could be sensitive to certain high FODMAP foods in specific quantities, but able to tolerate others in higher quantities. Again, this is why it's so important to be working with a dietitian to help you eat the greatest variety of foods with the fewest amount of symptoms. Reason number 3, you're swallowing too much air. What we consume and how we consume it can increase the amount of air that we swallow, which can build up in the digestive tract and lead to uncomfortable gas. So things like drinking carbonated beverages, drinking through a straw, chewing a lot of gum, eating while talking, or eating in a hurry can all contribute to the amount of air entering our bodies and therefore bloating. Now, reason number 4, you are undereating or suffering from an eating disorder. Now, this is a big topic, but there is a strong correlation between disordered eating and bloating for a variety of reasons. In short, chronically undereating can reduce stomach acid production and serotonin levels, which slows motility, and it can cause a sluggish thyroid, and it can also cause gastroparesis, which also slows digestion. This often can perpetuate further disordered eating because people wrongfully assume that they have food intolerances because they have symptoms when they do eat them, so they become more fearful of eating and then eat even less. And this actually just makes the digestive symptoms worse. Now, this deserves a whole video in itself, so if that's something of interest, definitely leave me a comment below. Reason number 5, you're not getting enough fiber and hydration.
Can I get you anything?
Water would be nice.
So one of the major causes of bloating is actually constipation or poor motility. If you're not consuming enough fiber and water to help your stool move through the bowels, you're gonna get backed up, which means more fermentation and more gas, bloating, and distension. So you'll want to aim for at least 25 to 38 grams of fiber per day, depending on sex, size, and tolerance, and a mix of soluble and insoluble fiber from foods like fruit, veggies, whole grains, and other plants. And don't forget that with any fiber, you need enough water to help propel that bulk through the bowel. So making sure that you're staying hydrated is really important to preventing yourself getting more backed up. And speaking of backed up, reason number 6 is you're eating too much fiber. So fiber is a really delicate balance when it comes to digestion. It's a real Goldilocks and the Three Bears situation. So like the porridge can easily be too hot or too cold.
I hate it when someone messes with my porridge.
It's sometimes hard to get it just right. But consuming excess of fiber is usually accompanied by a heavy load of FODMAPs, which can cause fermentation, which leads to gas. This is especially an issue if you're not used to consuming fiber and you suddenly consume a huge load of it, and perhaps we're just not consuming enough water to help support it. This is why it's worth working with a professional for any constipation related issues, because there really can be some careful trial and error to ensure that you're getting enough fiber, but not too much to help move the bowels without excess bulk. And that brings me to reason number 7, inadequate digestive outputs. Anytime we see someone make any drastic quick changes to their diet, whether it's, a crash weight loss diet or an unsupervised elimination diet, eating disorder, etc., there's a risk of normal digestion going south. Major fast changes to diet don't allow your body the time it needs to really catch up on digestive outputs, like creating the right enzymes or stomach acid amounts. So for example, if you've been dairy-free for years and you suddenly have a big bowl of ice cream, your body has gotten used to not having to produce the lactase enzyme to break that down. So yeah, it's probably gonna hurt. Ditto for folks who've gone vegan and who suddenly have a 16-ounce steak. Their body didn't get the urgent memo in time to produce enough of the protease enzymes and stomach acid needed to break that porterhouse down. So we need to really go slow to train the gut to upregulate the enzyme and stomach acid production to meet the body's changing demands. Moving on to reason number 8, hormones. Now, the rise in progesterone hormone leading up to that time of the month can not only contribute to the feeling of bloating from some water retention, but also typically results in constipation, which can further exacerbate symptoms of gas, bloating, and abdominal discomfort. I know I'm simplifying this because hormones is another one of those massively complicated topics, so let's just leave it at that. And if you want more hormone-related content, let me know in the comments below. But speaking of a massive topic, reason number 9 is that you have a functional GI disorder. So if you've ruled out all of the above and you're still experiencing bloating, it could be a sign that there may be a more serious gastrointestinal disorder going on. Some common digestive disorders that can cause bloating include things like irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, celiac disease, hypochlorhydria, histamine intolerance, and pancreatic insufficiency. Now, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty on each of these, but if you do suspect there is a medical issue, be proactive and be pushy with your primary healthcare provider to get the appropriate tests run. Now, moving on to reason number 10, infection, overgrowth, or dysbiosis. Now, there are a number of potential infections and overgrowths that can potentially contribute to digestive symptoms like bloating. So things like H. pylori, SIBO, CFO, C. diff, candida, worms, parasites, or just general dysbiosis in the gut. The diagnostic tools that we have for these include things like breath tests, like you saw me do in my SIBO series, or GI mapping or other stool samples that your doctor can order from a lab. In any case, do not follow some TikToker's protocol and assume that you have like an infection or an overgrowth without the proper tests run, because there are pharmaceutical and herbal treatments for these that are very specific to the cause. Now, reason number 11 is thyroid dysfunction. So the thyroid is so important. Not only is it your metabolic epicenter, but it's also in charge of communicating with every other system to produce enough bile acid, pancreatic acid, enzymes, and to stimulate motility, you name it. So folks with hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's often experience severe digestive distress and bloating because the thyroid receptors in the abdomen are not getting enough thyroid hormone, so the gut isn't getting those digestive signals. As a result, we see poor motility, which leads to constipation, which means the food has more time to ferment and therefore a lot more gas and bloating, which also predisposes these folks to other conditions like SIBO and candida. In any case, these symptoms usually improve dramatically once we correct the thyroid hormone. Reason number 12, trauma to the brain-gut axis. Now, I've briefly spoken about the brain-gut axis before, but in short, this is the bidirectional communication between the central and enteric nervous system that links cognitive centers of the brain with intestinal functioning. It's a concept behind the idea of having butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous. Any physical or emotional trauma that damages this brain-gut axis has the power to cause bloating. So this could be actual physical trauma like a football player's head injury, or more psychological trauma related to PTSD, depression, or anxiety, which is also often related to low serotonin levels. Now, what about excess sodium and sugar? So we often use the term bloated to describe a feeling when we eat like a really salty meal or have a huge sugar load. But this puffy feeling is more accurately described as water retention. In the case of salt, high sodium foods can cause our bodies to retain excess water, which can also contribute to feeling puffy, or in colloquial terms, bloated. With carbohydrates, when consumed in excess, the energy that we don't immediately need gets stored as glycogen, along with 3 grams of water for every gram of carbohydrates stored. So this explains why people who go on really low carb diets drop a ton of weight really quickly. It's a lot of water storage weight from the glycogen depleting. Now, to close off, I want to remind everyone that this is not an exhaustive list of causes, and everyone's bloating experience is going to be unique and often multifactorial. But I do hope that this gives you all a little bit of insight into your own digestive patterns and whether or not it's time to bring your case to a skilled practitioner for advice. So on that note, that is all that I have for you guys today. If you liked it, be sure to give it the thumbs up. Stay tuned for part 2 in this bloating episode. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and I will see you next time in Abby's Kitchen. Bye!